Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the SCV Law and Life podcast. I'm your host, Mason Rashtian, personal injury attorney and the founder of the Mason Law Firm right here in Santa Clarita. Today, I'm honored to welcome someone with us who's dedicated his life to leadership in both military and business environments. Our guest today is retired Colonel Paul Raggio, founder and owner of Five Star Leader Development, a veteran owned firm right here in Santa Clarita. Paul has spent over the last 4 decades developing leaders from commanding airborne military police units in the U.S. Army to overseeing multi-$100 million business growth strategies in the corporate world. Now he's coaching executives and business owners to become stronger, more effective leaders. He has been recognized by the Santa Clarita Chamber of Commerce, the Signal, and Action Coach for his outstanding leadership and business results. Needless to say, we have a lot of wisdom here today. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mason. I look forward to it. It's always great to be on these type of media platforms and being able to tell stories.
Well, great. So I'm kind of familiar with you since you've been my business coach since after the pandemic, which is 2020. I think we started 20 or 21. I can't remember.
hmm
But I remember when it first started, we were still wearing the masks, and I was sitting at the other side of the table.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. But for those of you, those who are not familiar with you, why don't you take a couple of minutes and tell us about your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Glendale and then went off to Santa Clara to get my undergraduate degree in finance and business, and I did it on an ROTC scholarship. And so that brought me into the Army, and I went into the Military Police Corps, but had three specialties, and one was in comptrollership, and the third one was as a legislative liaison. So I spent 26 years in the Army and commanded all the way through and up to the brigade level. And that means it's about 3,000 troops, and it was all the military police that were east of the Mississippi River in the continental United States, and then retired from the Army after 26 years and was picked up by a large federal government contracting corporation. And this was post 9/11, and they were just starting to put security forces in to control access to Army installations. And the company that recruited me said they needed someone with my background, which was law enforcement as well as finance and comptrollership, to start a $500 million contract. So I did that and had it set up with about 2,000 employees, and we were in 25 states at the time. Um, and then the chairman of the board of the corporation said, "Hey, we only have four companies at this time. Three are in IT, one is in manufacturing. Would you consider starting a security company for us?" And I did. And about 3 years later, we were doing about $50 million. And then the chairman asked me to start another company as well as take over a distressed company. And that led to now leading a business unit with 8 companies at one time in different life cycle stages. And I did that for 14 years and decided to retire. And I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and then moved back to California. And I was too young not to do anything, and I was very passionate about giving back to others, and thought, what do I really like doing? And it's was in the coaching field. I had been in a peer advisory group for 9 years and found it just really enjoyable and helpful for me. So went into the coaching business and have been. That was in 2018, right before the pandemic, and then have been doing that since.
Okay. So, for those of you who've never used the business coach, tell us what a business coach does.
Yeah, that's a great question because there's a lot of different thoughts about, should I engage one, not engage one? And a business coach is really someone who helps you see things in a very distinct way and can quickly evaluate your business and look at areas that need that are challenged that may need some help. So generally in a business, when you're looking at um, about 8 different factors in terms of growth and sustainability and profitability, and those 8 factors can be broken down into sub factors. And just like with you, put together a game plan, and then we work on that game plan to improve those challenged areas over time. The unique thing about business coaches are if they have experience, there's a level of transparency between the owner
Mhm.
and the business coach, and we have a dialogue and have the ability to offer different perspective on things that you may not otherwise think of. And then an important element of it is being able to hold the owner or the CEO or the CEO's team accountable for actions that they need to take in order to improve the business. So it's a relationship
Right.
that's really based on trust and progress.
So here's one thing I'm sure a lot of people think about when they hear business coaches, because I did.
Hmm.
I would think to myself, well, you're not a lawyer. You don't, how would you know what I need in my law practice? Right. So that was a concern
Yeah,
that I think a lot of people have because, but they don't realize is what you do is not specific to me as a lawyer in the way I work as a lawyer. You don't have to know that. You do the business part of it. And what I learned that was from John, because John is also one of your clients and he does insurance. So
hmm,
for those who really, do you have to know a particular business for them to come to you, or can you work with anybody?
yeah. I really don't. I get asked that question all the time, even though my background's in law enforcement and
Hmm.
security. I help other companies out that aren't in that industry or discipline. And so business practices are somewhat fungible. I mean, it's based on your financials, it's based upon marketing and business development, sales. It's you have certain operational processes that you follow. You have people, the talent that's involved, and they're matched to some type of technology or systems. You have financial controls in place. And so this is true with any business. It doesn't, could be a lawyer operating such as you, it could be a real estate broker, it could be a restaurant. It could be any one of those things where, from a business standpoint, they may not be looking at how do I put together a strategic plan? How do I put together goals? And do I orient the goals towards growth? Or how do I invest capital into the business in terms of growing the business? And what's the best way to invest the capital? So these are all questions that any business owner or solopreneur or large business, they all deal with these same issues. Is how do we get to point A to point Z and optimize our processes and maximize profitability? Those are the things that I can help bring to the
Right.
table.
One thing I never knew how to do or even thought about before working with you was the vision, mission statement, our core values, which has really helped me hone down and concentrate on what we do and help our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the areas that I see in a lot of companies is a lack of directed focus. And so these, I call them commitment statements. So your purpose, your vision, your mission, your values, those are all commitment statements. You're making a commitment to your stakeholders, your clients, your employees, and they're all related. I mean, you need all of those type of statements in order to develop a pathway to move forward. So what they do is provide focus. All of us get to the point where we're in business, and guess what we like to
Mhm.
do? Chase shiny, bright objects. And anytime you start chasing shiny, bright objects, you're spending money. You're spending energy and money, and you're not focused, and it degrades your profitability. So having these statements, the commitment statements and your vision, because you and I talk about this a lot. Where do you want to be? For example, we just got through talking about it. Where do you want to be in 2027? And then how do you see 2026 playing out in order to get to 2027? And what are the things that we have to do in terms of overarching goals for 2026? And then how do we break those down into quarterly objectives and key results? And then how do we break that down into monthly milestones? And that way you're actually developing a map and a pathway to get to what you want in terms of goals by the end of 2026 and eventually 2027. So yes, those are essential. They're
Right.
essential statements required for business growth.
And the other thing is P&Ls. I knew nothing about P&Ls, but I'm so glad that I know them now because you break down everything as far as what the profits are, where the money goes, what the costs are, and how we can help either reduce the costs or increase profits, and where the money goes.
Yeah, if there's one central weakness, and it's all the way up through mid-sized businesses, I've seen it even $100 million and $100 million plus businesses, is that they may do well at putting together a plan, and they talk about having these lofty goals that they need to achieve, but where they don't connect the dots is being able to translate that plan into dollars. And uh, dollars meaning a budget and a forecast. And so a lot of companies don't spend as much time doing that translation, and then their goal development, their goals just get sit on a shelf. But if we actually translate that plan into a budget, then monthly we're measuring plan achievement against the budget and your profitability results. And so with all my clients, I focus an awful lot on being able to tie their planning process and translating that into a budget and a financial forecast. And when you focus on it, that's when you drive results. You see that, hey, if I actually put this goal out there and I can find a way to get to that goal, and I can translate that into a revenue stream and the subordinate cost it takes to drive that revenue, then I'm going to be profitable. And and so we spend a lot of time focusing on that on a monthly basis. But even in our business
Mhm.
discussions during our weekly sessions, you and I are constantly dialoguing about, well, if you implemented this strategy, what do you expect the result to be? And does that result translate into a new revenue stream, an increase in revenue? And what's the likelihood it's going to increase your profitability too? So those discussions, yeah, happen.
Yeah. And what size businesses do you work with?
Well, I can work with, you would be considered more a solopreneur all the way up to uh, mid-sized businesses. My comfort level's up to about a business of $250 million. And the enterprise I was running was 150 million in sales and 2,000 employees. So um, I just have a lot of lessons learned, regarding that size. And uh, fortunately, working in the corporation I was in, they asked me to start up a company and start up another company. So I have a lot of startup experience, growth experience, and even shuttering companies. That's the other area that, as well as reviewing
Mhm.
companies for acquisition. So even evaluating them to see whether or not they would be a good fit or not, and doing the due diligence on several companies for acquisitions.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or talk to you about their business, how do they go about doing it?
Well, they can go to my website, fivestarleaderdevelopment.com, or call or text me at 252-571-7368.
Okay. So do you enjoy what you do as far as coaching?
I love it. It's it really is. It's a great passion in my stage in life. One of the great things about having an experienced coach too is that I've made a lot of mistakes. And if I can help others avoid making those mistakes, then it's it's money in the bank for them. It really is. Some of the mistakes I made were big mistakes, and so in my translation with the client, it's always about, here's something to consider that you
Hmm.
may want to avoid, because if you don't, there's risk involved, and this risk may translate into a significant financial impact. And that's where a lot of the experience comes in, is being able to say, I made that mistake before, don't make the same mistake.
Okay. And did your military background help you in any way as far as what you do today? And
Oh,
if you did,
what a
how did that do it?
what a great question. And so, yes, yeah, the here's what I've discovered is that with my military background, there's a lot of emphasis on leadership skills. And in the military, every time you're promoted, whether you're a non-commissioned officer or a commissioned officer, you go to a technical school, and the technical school increases your skill set from whatever specialty you're in. So I went to a number of police schools that advanced me in law enforcement. But tied to each of those schools is also a leadership component, where the Army spent a lot of time teaching you how to be a leader at the next level up. Well, the corporate world doesn't have the same thing. The corporate world will spend a lot of time on teaching you the technical skills. So we have great managers out in the corporate world. Uh, what they lack, though, is leadership skills. And so the managerial skills is really dealing with, how do I marry talent, human talent, with technology and processes. And the leadership skills is how do I emotionally connect with the people that I'm leading to inspire them to do exceptional work. I mean, that they're two very distinct things, and the corporate world doesn't do as good a job training their leaders in that area. They do a great job in teaching them the managerial skills. So, from my business practice, I see a lot of that with clients, is that the development and the leader skills really helps them accelerate the growth, as well as, I call it, operational velocity, and which translates into productivity and profitability.
Okay. If you were to give an advice to a business owner listening today, just a simple advice that everybody could follow, what would it be?
Yeah, it's really focusing on, how do you connect your planning and your financials, and staying laser focused on your financials. That should be top of mind when you're a business owner, is, how am I doing financially, and how do I accelerate growth and increase my profitability? Those are big questions, and it's not a matter of just staying current with your financials, that,
Mhm.
hey, I have got money in the bank and I can make payroll. It's really about, how do I best leverage my money in order to grow the business into a larger enterprise and profitability.
So when I started working with you, I had already had my office for about 14 years. I'd been an attorney for a couple of decades. So I thought I knew it all. So what I'm getting at is, does for somebody who's been in the business for a long time or someone who's just starting up, can you help both? Does it matter how long you've been in business? Should they come to you right away? I mean, what do you think is the best advice for that?
Yeah, and again, I think that's unique to my experience, and it's not taken away from any other business coaches. But I've been in the startup mode. I can tell you what it's like in terms of anxiety in starting a company, and worrying about whether you're going to be able to make your numbers and achieve some level of growth. I've also been, after starting companies and taking over companies, I've also seen some companies decline, and the erosion of their revenue stream or profitability, because the marketplace has changed. So I like working with both sides, and I especially like working with entrepreneurs that are getting started, and I like working with seasoned veterans. One of the keys is ability to be coached, though, that's always questionable. If you're resistant to coaching, then you aren't going to maximize the benefit of someone like me. But if you're open and to trying different things or being transparent about some of the areas that are challenged within your business, then a coach can really help you. They just see things differently, and there's a cost factor too. Just like with attorneys, you're paying for a professional level of experience and expertise. However, the cost that you spend on a business coach is truly an investment, because you'll make the money several fold in the future just by the practices that are introduced by the business coach.
Right. The one thing we haven't talked about is exit strategies.
Hmm.
Everybody at some point is going to think about, okay, at some point, either I have to sell my business, wind down, retire. And I know you and I talked about that before as far as putting together an exit strategy. And most people, I would say 90% of people don't have that. But
Yeah.
I know you help out with that, which is extremely important.
Um,
I mean,
I mean, that really is a great point. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, yeah, just tell us more about that part of what you do also.
Yeah, so if you imagine business is just like a life, I mean, it has a beginning and it has an ending. And you aren't certain, you're certain about the beginning, but you aren't certain about the ending. And uh, the business itself, you want to be able to create equity in the business, goodwill, and its ability to generate some level of valuation so you can hand that business off if that's what, either to a family member or you're going to sell it. And so your what we call sweat equity, your sweat equity is being paid for by your annual income off of the business, but your retirement nest egg is going to be created by what you do in terms of increasing the valuation of your business. So in coaching my clients, I'm always discussing with them, what do you see as an end state? Do you plan on selling your business? Do you plan on growing your business and transferring it or passing it on to, a child or a friend or a family member? Because that makes a difference in how you are actually making decisions today and the impact it could have on the business 5 years from now. So often when I start with the client, that's one of the first questions I ask is, what is it that you intend on doing with the business? Is this something you want to sell? Is it something that you want to pass on? And if you aren't certain, that's okay too. You want to drive it for 5, 10 years, that's a part of it. But eventually you'll have to think about an exit strategy and you exiting the business and either selling it or passing it on.
So now let's ask a question about Paul, about you.
Okay.
Based on what you know today, if you could go back and tell your younger self, give yourself
Mhm.
an advice, what would it be?
Uh, I think of myself as being a very good listener. Now, I may not have been such a good listener when I was younger. I was much more driven and aggressive and thinking I knew a lot of things that I didn't know. And now that I've aged a little bit, I'm a much better listener and a much better learner, because there's still an awful lot for me to learn out there. And and then being able to use it in a purpose-driven life. So that would be the if I had to do things over at a younger age, I would really practice my listening skills instead of my dialogue skills, and listen to what was being said and translate that instead of trying to think of, I already have an answer to it.
Ah, that's a good advice. I wish I learned
Good
that when I was a
takeaway,
kid.
huh?
Yeah, exactly. What's your take? What did you learn today?
That's right.
All right. So tell us again how people can get a hold of you if they're looking for a business coach.
Yeah, just go to my 5starleaderdevelopment.com website. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I publish a daily business tip. So if you follow me, you'll be able to get one of those business tips on a day, and it's always centered on leadership or best business practices. Or text or call me at 252-571-7368. And thanks, Mason. I really appreciate the opportunity to join your podcast group.
Of course. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Your journey from commanding airborne units to guiding CEOs and organizations is a powerful reminder that leadership is not a title, it is a daily practice. And
Exactly.
exactly. And thank you again for everybody for listening to the SCV Law and Life podcast. If you like us, please either subscribe or give us a comment, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Paul.